In 2010, Apple released one of their smallest computers yet, the 11-inch MacBook Air. This computer was released as a smaller companion to the 13-inch MacBook Air, which was already, by that point, a pretty big success. The 11-inch MacBook Air was a smaller and cheaper, lighter alternative to the 13-inch MacBook Air. So the 11-inch MacBook Air was overall a success, seeing multiple different model years and different specs. The one I have here is a dual-core Intel Core i7 model with 8GB of RAM, and it came out in 2015. I think this was about the highest spec model possible for the time. For the sake of usability, I decided to patch this machine to the latest version of macOS, which is right now Sonoma. I was able to get it on without too much hassle, and usability isn't too terrible, with the overall experience being decent, but that's not really what this video is about. I will say that for this machine in 2024, isn't really all that great to use. For general web browsing, it's possible, but running anything such as demanding websites will quickly slow this machine down, and it will become really hard to get any real usage out of it. I also tried editing in 720p on Final Cut Pro, and this laptop could not do that smoothly at all. With what I'd call an unusable experience, honestly. I'm really not sure if I could make this experience any better. Maybe it was the footage coming from my 15 Pro, or maybe I could encode it differently and get better results, but as it stands, even downscaling my footage to 720p, this is an unusable experience. But the 11-inch MacBook Air was a slightly bigger laptop compared to the iPad 2, which was a tablet, but apparently that was a selling point of this laptop from what I've read. I'd imagine that this laptop would be a really nice computer back in the day to use, as it featured a decently sized keyboard and a surprisingly high resolution display for its time. I personally feel like the display on this laptop is much better than the display on the 13-inch MacBook Air, as the resolution on the smaller display just really looks great. I think it's got a higher pixel per inch count. This laptop is somewhat comparable to my 12-inch MacBook, which I'm writing the script for this video on, but the performance is better on the Air's i7 chip, and the keyboard is much, much better. The 12-inch MacBook, which this one is from 2017, has a better design, display, and features. However, it is a lot thinner, lighter, smaller, and it's got the haptic trackpad. And it even features the Retina display, which is something that the second generation MacBook Airs pretty famously actually excluded. The MacBook Air 11-inch also featured a very respectable port selection with 2 USB-A ports, a MagSafe 2 port, Thunderbolt 2, and a headphone jack. This is really nothing compared to Windows competitors even for the time, but I would have expected a single USB-A port and maybe, probably, the exclusion of Thunderbolt. The bezels on this laptop are really big, even for its time. They were pretty thick. Looking at something like the PowerBook G4 12-inch, or any PowerBook G4 for that matter, it makes the MacBook Air look really outdated and old, even though it's almost a decade newer than those PowerBooks. The bezels are in the nice aluminum finish though, which makes the laptop look somewhat cheaper, but it also makes the laptop look unique and honestly cooler in my opinion. The really cool part about the first 3 generations of the MacBook Air, which includes this second generation machine, was the tapered design. This made the entire laptop look thinner than it was, and it was a unique design that not a lot of manufacturers on the Windows side of things were able to replicate properly. Definitely not in 2011 at least. The battery life on these machines were pretty decent, I'd say. The dual-core processor made sure there was essentially no powerful hardware being held inside of this laptop, and the efficiency was pretty good overall for an Intel machine. These laptops drew so little power that they were able to be powered off of a 45-watt MagSafe 2 power adapter, which was shipped in the box of these 11-inch models. Of course, these machines had their issues. When they came out, they shipped with 2GB of RAM, which would almost be like a MacBook shipping with 4GB now, even though the new MacBook Pro M3s aren't really that far from being that. The dual-core processors also had the lower performance than the MacBook Pros, which had much more powerful processors. They also had design issues, like how they bent really easily on a drop, but overall, these were pretty solid machines for the time. I actually remember I had one of these machines in 2013 to 2015, at least I think it was 2013, and I really enjoyed using it. To my knowledge, it was a mid-2013 model, and it was the second MacBook I ever owned, and overall, I enjoyed using it a lot. Since that was before I got into video editing and video production as a whole, I didn't need all that much power. I really just used it for really basic web browsing and some very light gaming at the time, and it was fine for that until the screen ended up having some issues in 2015, and it ended up being smashed with a hammer, I believe. All in all, these machines, while not exactly amazing today, were really nice laptops at the time that they came out. So with all that stuff said, thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for 900 subscribers last week. That was really cool, and goodbye.